Well, thank you for joining us today. We're here to receive the final report of the Special Action Team on Affordable Housing. So we'll do that and then we'll make formal remarks.
On behalf of the Special Action Team on Affordable Rental Housing, I would like to present to you the Affordable Rental Housing Report and 10-year plan.
Right here. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. Great.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for being here. I just really wanted to start by asking the members of the Special Action Team who are present to just stand so people can recognize you, I guess after almost 2 years. Really wanted to thank each and every one of you for all of the work. You can sit for all of the work that went into this report. This is really a way forward. I really wanted to also thank Leo Assumption. I don't see Leo here, so I know he's always involved, and the State Office of Planning for convening the group and really keeping the group on task to move forward, to really lay out a 10-year plan on how we can truly accomplish what we've known about and talked about for a long time, the shortage of affordable rentals in our community. The goal of the Special Action Team was to develop a plan to generate 22,500 affordable rental units. I really did want to thank all the members. All the counties were represented in the Special Action Team, working with the state agencies and other advocates who had input into this plan. The report is clear. The shortage is really driven by the fact that we just haven't been producing affordable rentals for many years. And certainly I think the Special Action Team took on the task and challenge at hand very directly. I think it's a comprehensive report that sets very clear and presents very clear solutions and actions that everyone would have to contribute to really moving forward in producing 22,500 affordable rental units. It is clear that there's no quick fix, there's no magic bullet. Nothing is going to happen to alleviate the shortage next year or the year after that or the year after that. This clearly is a challenge that will take many years to accomplish. I guess the specific plan is a decade to really make a dent in this challenge. It will require consistent and significant funding in order to implement. I know that the plan talks about $100 million each and every year for the next decade. So it is something that legislative bodies all across the state will have to stand up and be counted, the state legislature included. It definitely is something that government cannot do alone. And the report is very clear. It will take a public-private partnership. We had a private sector involved with the Special Action Team to provide their expertise to help us understand what the requirements would be. It did involve each of the counties, and I wanted to personally thank the housing directors from Kauai, Maui, Oahu, and Hawaii Island for your participation in this report. I think we look forward to working with the counties in partnership with the private sector and the state to move forward on this plan. And finally, it's definitely something that we will need to get community support. The plan suggests that we need more than $1 billion over the next decade to move forward with 22,000 units. So it will require consistent, significant funding from the state to move forward and be able to complete the 22,000 units. The report also identifies challenges that we need to address and take on. And I think the most exciting part of the report, I think, that is very specific and tangible, the report did go through and look at county, state, and private sector lands that would be suitable for affordable rental projects and prioritize them about the ease of development in a way that is tangible and meaningful and provides all of us as a community, public, private sector, to identify which projects would be feasible in which areas, and I think most importantly allows us to move forward. I really look forward to the challenge presented. I do feel like we've made significant progress over the last 4 years, and really this plan is a tangible, real effort to identify what needs to happen in the next decade so that 10 years from now, we will stand here and say, we did it, here's 22,000 affordable rental units. And with that, I would like to invite Representative Mark Hasham to talk a little bit about, as you know, this was a legislative initiative. We were proud to be partners, but I'd like to invite Representative Hasham to say a few words.
No, well, Breen, come up, because you're my counterpart. I think you should come up too.
Breen, sorry.
Hello, my name is Mark Hasham. I was the housing chair during the time when the bill passed. Senator Harimoto, come on, was my Senate counterpart as the Senate housing chair. So this bill, I'll just give a brief history about the bill and explain how this came about. The bill is originally Jill Takuta's bill that started from the Senate. When it came over to the House, we made considerable amount of amendments to it. Basically, it's Craig Hirai sitting over here and Leo Asuncion and we really worked on crafting the bill to what it is now. And I worked with Breen Harimoto on the Senate side, as when he was the housing chair for the Senate, that we came to what it is exactly now. The big thing we had was you wanted to add more people and I wanted to pull out more people, so. But anyways, we came to a consensus and this is what the bill is. You wanna say anything?
Thank you. I just want to say, it really takes everybody working together to get this done. Many times, as Rep. Hasham just said, people have different ideas. But, the good thing about this is everybody realized that we needed to move forward, that we all came to consensus about what we needed to do to move forward. So, so many people were involved, and I think we need to thank everyone, including the governor, for his leadership in getting us here.
Yes, the execution part was definitely from the governor's side, and the foundation was all from the governor's administration. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. The counties will be a major player in moving and meeting the challenge of affordable rentals all across the state. And representing the counties who fully participated in the special action team, we have Neil Gyotoku from Hawaii Island, Administrator for the Office of Housing and Community Development. Neil?
I was asked by the special action team to give a few words about what Hawaii County is doing right now. In addition to dealing with a minor incident of lava flow, we've had to also continue our work as far as affordable housing. I was asked Mayor Kim, and he sat me down and said his vision right now is to build a community in the Puna district for the individuals and families that are affected by the lava flow. He instructed me that this community will have to be out of harm's way. It'll have to be community friendly, and it also have to meet island lifestyle, which is, to him, is very important that it fits the lifestyle of the island. We are exploring alternatives and hope to come up with a conceptual plan on this very soon. Governor Ige and the state of Hawaii has been very supportive in our efforts to develop this plan, both fundamentally and financially. The County of Hawaii continues to build affordable housing units, and some of the projects that are close to being developed are for East Hawaii, Moho'uli Senior Housing 3, West Kawili Street Senior Housing. For West Hawaii, we have Kaloko Heights Multifamily Housing, Village 9 or Laiapua Transitional Housing, Kamakua Nui Multifamily Housing Units, and Kai'o'o Waikoloa Multifamily Housing. And I'd like to just say, Big Island strong.
And I have asked all of the housing agencies on the state level to really see which projects on Hawaii Island and Kauai can be identified as priorities. We know in both instances there have been significant displacements from residences, and we want to put a priority and see which projects are really shovel-ready and ready to go that we can kind of put to the top of the list to really help recovery and restoration action in those communities that have been most heavily impacted. The private sector will really be a significant part of this partnership to really meet the needs of our community. And I just really wanted to ask Stanford Carr, representing the private sector, to talk a little bit about the work of the Special Action Team. Stanford.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. I'm Stanford Carr. This 10-year plan is really an exemplification of the collaboration between the governor, the legislature, the state housing agencies, as well as all 4 counties collaborating together to develop a plan to build more workforce rental for the future. We now have a resource that has a comprehensive inventory of state and county lands that the counties and the state can collaborate in public-private partnerships with private sector developers to build more housing. What we need in the future to execute and effectuate this plan is the legislature appropriating the necessary funds for the gap financing over the next 10 years so that we can build and make all of this a reality and see the measurable results year after year. So I'm excited about it. It was a lot of work that went into this, but it was the stakeholders and the collaboration of both public and private sectors getting together for the common need for our community. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm just gonna ask the speakers to come up and you know, we are going to open it up to questions. I just really wanted to close by saying the Special Action Team, I just really wanted to thank them for all of the work and effort, for the time spent in developing this plan. And I think most importantly, the plan really is a reflection that when we all work together, we can do great things. And so with that, we'll be open to any questions from the media.
How many units expected on Hawaii Island?
The plan does have a breakdown of the units. I think approximately, and I'll just run through, Honolulu is the biggest number with just over 9,000. Maui is 4,950. Hawaii Island is 6,700 units, and Kauai is about 1,800. So, you know, obviously we're looking at, and Neil has talked about some of the immediate projects that are queued up, and we are close to being ready to proceed on that. And so, you know, obviously we will look for additional projects as funds become available.
So, since you guys brought that up, on Hawaii Island and lava and all the displaced families, how soon are we talking? I know appropriations are needed before you guys can start work, but how soon are we talking about affordable rental units for people who really need it there, who don't have a place to live?
As far as the transitional rental units you're talking about is, right now we concentrated mostly on the emergency sheltering. There is plans being developed, and hope to get a plan out hopefully within the next couple of weeks as far as a plan as far as to address the rental as well as the sale of units like that, sale of housing. There's approximately, we believe confirmed about 716 houses that were destroyed in the Leilani volcano, Kapoho area. In addition, a number of homes that were as far as uninhabitable or inaccessible. And those people, we're doing a survey as far as their various surveys as far as getting to know what kind of housing needs there are, so that we can use that in our plan to see how much units we need to develop. But the state has also chipped in as far as making whatever units they have under public housing, for example, available rentals. We've gone and talked to the private real estate people who handle property management, and they've offered units to these people that have been displaced. And it's all been channeled through the Disaster Relief Center and the Disaster Center.
I know we've been following that, and I don't know if I'm getting confused or what, but I know there's transitional temporary housing and all that. I'm just trying to find out if anything in this plan, how long any.
This plan really is about long-term permanent housing, so it really doesn't respond to the immediate needs.
That's what I was.
You know, right, so this is really more of a future. And remember, this program or this effort really started 2 years ago with the legislative interest. So this really is a long-term roadmap. Over the next decade will require public-private community commitment to build homes. You know, building permanent housing is not something that happens overnight. You know, it will require a decades-long investment of more than $1 billion from state government, additional investments on behalf of the counties and the private sector. And most importantly, I think it's a sustained commitment to developing housing, affordable rentals each and every year for the next decade.
I haven't been able to look at the, go ahead, Rick.
How would that $1 billion be financed? I mean, would this be a big push by your administration in the future, let's say, for, just like the Waihee administration did many years ago with HFDC? Is this something, how would this be done?
You know, there is no specific suggestion in the report itself. Obviously, the legislature would be required to authorize the appropriation. It does envision $100 million of bond funds being committed to the rental assistance revolving fund each and every year for the next decade. And that really doesn't cover the whole thing. I mean, there private sector involvement, low income tax credits. It will require a number of different programs at both federal, county, and state levels to really participate as well. The $100 million per year for the next decade is really just the specific contribution to the rental housing revolving fund.
So if that 100 million a year, 10 years is provided, would that be enough, or would that let developers and everybody achieve actual production of 22,000 units by 10 years, or is that even further out?
You know, that is not sufficient to complete 22,500, but I do believe that it's a significant, you know, part of the comments made from the special action team is that it really would begin to gear up the private industry, the developers who actually, you know, have boots on the ground that will construct these units, some certainty so they can begin to plan the projects and the resources that they need to bring to enable this going forward. So I think what the special action team envisions, and you guys please feel free to jump in, is that provides the baseline that would begin the consistent production of affordable rental housing projects that will create enough inertia to attract the activities necessary to meet the full 22,500.
So there's no like year projection of that 22,000 being done, or is there in the report?
Andrew, I believe that this will start the momentum. We now have an inventory of Tier 1 lands, and Tier 1 meaning urban lands with adjacent infrastructure. So we're identifying and prioritizing lands in the urban or suburban areas that are either owned by the state or the county that can be developed for rental housing. And I believe with this, as we execute and start building, we will see some momentum and more further growth.
Was there any thought to preserving existing affordable housing, low-income housing as affordable and low-income housing? Because over the last few years, we've lost a lot of those to mid-range, you know, we've had a lot of conversions of low-income housing projects. Was there any thought to finding a way to keeping affordable housing? I mean, the examples I mean would be, we've had like Montero Hillside's one example, it's converted to medium price, but was there any thought of keeping these things or some kind of mechanism of keeping these things affordable?
Well, I do think, let me just answer what I know, and then I'll ask Craig to really respond. But yes, we are looking, and we're working with private sector developers as we look at when these affordable units get to that transition point. As you know, we were out at Waipahu Tower, and I was criticized for identifying that as a project. But once again, it was that opportunity to take housing that may not have been committed explicitly to affordable rentals, and with state investment and private sector investment, assure that it can be affordable rental for 61 years. And so, yes, we would be looking at it, and
Yeah, I can address that. The plan really focuses on state and county land. And one of the main, if it's on government land, we have control over what's there. The usual lease is 65-year lease, and at the end of the term, it comes back to the state, and we're gonna repurpose that most likely to affordable housing, if we're gonna continue the existing use. So, and I believe now, everything is 30 years for the LIHTC credits, right? For affordability.
Well, on state land, it's.
Craig.
Craig, right?
Yeah. Craig, just introduce yourself.
Craig Hirai, the Executive Director of the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation. With respect to state lands, the affordability is almost always, can't think of any exceptions, for the life of the lease. And so, you know, like I said, at the end of the lease, if you continue the use, it'll also be for affordable housing. Thank you.
yes.
Is it, are there any like big out-of-the-box ideas or new ideas in this plan? Or is it more put money to something that has been done and does, you know, there are examples like Kuila Place, and just do a lot more of it? Is that?
I think it's a combination of both, but, you know, we had a groundbreaking for Nohono Hale yesterday, which is new and innovative. It's micro units. You know, it takes a small parcel of land, less than 10,000 square feet, and if you think about how many affordable housing units would you be able to put on a parcel that's less than 10,000 square feet, and that project itself generates 110 affordable rentals for 60 plus years, and it is micro units. So the typical unit is less than 300 it's about 300 square feet with a lanai. So it is innovative. It's not something that has been here in the past. And so it really is, maximizes, I think, both the combination of federal and state assistance and the private sector, really to create something that is new to this market, and that we've actually talked about for a while. I mean, we've been talking about micro units and what that might look like, and what a project might be. And clearly a parcel of less than 10,000 square feet being able to generate more than 100 affordable rental units, I think is a pretty innovative solution. And I'll let Stanford, who might have better ideas about different things, but clearly, you know, I think the power of the plan is that it really is it's a partnership, a true partnership in the best sense of the word. It involves all the counties, it involves the state, it involves the private sector, and we are all looking at the tools that we all control, state land, county land, trying to put it on in a plan together to make it available to the people who will make it happen, which generally is the private sector. But certainly, I invite Stanford to
Sure.
make few.
Thank you, Governor. In the last few legislative sessions, bills have been passed that create new tools to finance affordable rentals. Particularly, 2 years ago, the legislature passed the accelerating the use of the state tax credits, much like the federal low-income housing tax credit program, to be used over a 5-year period as opposed to 10. And that generated a higher price or value for those tax credits. Previously, investors for those credits would pay anywhere from 36 to 42 cents per dollar credit. Today, they are paying 60 to 65 cents per dollar credit, which generates more equity going into the projects and minimizes the amount of debt financing necessary, or gap financing. This past legislative session, Act 54 was amended and extended to exempt general excise tax on indirect and direct construction costs to construct rental apartments, but also exempt the general excise tax on the revenues of the rents through the year, I believe, 2030. So these are tools that have been created. We now need to implement these tools and execute to build more rental housing. With now an inventory and accounting of Tier 1 lands, we can start effectuating the business plan.
I think one other thing that's not included in the plan, but I think that provides another opportunity for innovation and creative thinking. You know, the federal tax reform created opportunity zones. And when you overlay the opportunity zones over the Tier 1 lands, I think it creates another look at one more tool that the federal government has authorized that might be able to create different kinds of approaches to these affordable projects moving forward. Yeah.
Is there any, for the walkthrough projects, is there any commonality with TOD projects? I mean, is there anything that can mesh there?
I mean, I'm certain that the TOD lands along the transit route are Tier 1 lands, but I don't know if there's anything.
That's actually correct. Majority of it's TOD.
So I do know, you know, since the Office of State Planning was involved and they're involved with the TOD planning, you know, and the ongoing activities we had to look at production of housing, I think all of these plans are complementary and work well together. You know, the TOD plan, obviously, we've tried to prioritize. Now we've gone through all the state land and identified Tier 1 state lands that can be made available, but you know, the TOD plan is specific to those parcels along the transit. This really addresses all the state land, all the county land, private lands as well.
Does this have to wait on the legislature to appropriate funding before we could see some of these units being built?
Well, certainly last year's appropriation of $200 million into the rental housing revolving fund already gives us a start. Craig has already committed $182 million of that $200 million. So we are going through and awarding those projects, and I know that some are shovel ready and ready to go. But clearly, this plan allows us to really enable all the private sector guys really to look at the parcels, whether they be county projects that they would want to have conversations with the county, or state projects that they could meet and talk with Craig and the rest of the team. I think that's kind of the next step. You know, they're kind of committed if we can begin the process of getting consistent funding from the legislature to make sure that the private sector partners are available and committed and willing to make the projects happen.
I was going to ask about that money, the 200 million after, but since you brought it up, it's tied into this already.
The money was deposited into the rental housing revolving fund, and we've already identified, like I said, 182 million. I think the board, Craig, you want to talk about that? The ones that are shovel ready have been already.
Well, we have applications.
Right.
For about that number. Since the governor's been in office, we've awarded rental housing revolving fund money for 2,100 units, roughly 400 of which have been completed. So there's 1,700 units that are either under construction or pending financial close and start of construction. So that's part of the ongoing process. Like the governor said, it's a process that is somewhat complex and time-consuming, but you know, you have to sustain the effort over a period of years.
thank you. Any further questions?
Oh, might Craig give us like a, I don't know, average annual over the last 10 years? How much money has gone to the rental housing trust fund before this 200 million? And then how many units have been coming out?
I think in the last couple of years, we've been, because of the funding, we've been funding close to 100 million a year for the last 2 years. Before that, it was not nearly as robust. I can't really go, I don't have off the top of my head before that, but part of it was the Great Recession in 2008, so I mean, it's starting to ramp up, or it has been ramping up over the last 4 or 5 years.
Any other questions? If not, thank you all, and I just really wanted to thank the Special Action Team for all of your work and the hours and hours spent in the report. I'm excited about the roadmap that you have created, and certainly committed to doing my part from the state's perspective of ensuring that we can work through all the action items identified and really deliver to our communities consistent quantities of affordable rental projects all across the state. So thank you all very much.